do 3,000 men survive an unwinnable battle against an army of 100,000? September 629 AD, a diplomatic killing sparks war. The Prophet sends 3,000 men north from Medina toward Muta. But beyond the ridge waits a Byzantine-led coalition stretching across the horizon. A coalition of 100,000. The Byzantine war machine, heavy lamellar armor, long iron swords. Outnumbered 33 to 1, the Muslims hold the line. Roman arrows darken the sky. They brace, then charge straight into the empire. The Prophet had appointed 3 commanders in succession. Zayd ibn Haritha carries the banner first, until enemy spears bring him down. Ja'far takes the banner next, and fights his way deep into the enemy ranks. Even after losing both hands, he holds it against his chest, refusing to let it fall. 90 wounds, not one on his back. Then Abdullah ibn Rawaha takes the banner. He enters the fighting and becomes the 3rd commander to fall. With the appointed commanders gone, the army chose Khalid ibn al-Walid. The fighting around him became so violent that 9 swords broke in his hands. Only 1 Yemenite blade remained. As darkness approached, he prepared a different kind of battle, one fought through confusion and fear. Khalid reshuffled the ranks and sent riders behind the army to raise a wall of dust, creating the illusion that reinforcements had arrived. The enemy hesitated, and Khalid used that moment to withdraw and save the army, earning his title, Saifullah, the Sword of God.
Most of this battle was generated with Seedance 2.0. In this video, I'll show you how I created the scenes and used After Effects, Photoshop, Blender, and ComfyUI to build the final battle. I started by generating the main reference images with Nano Banana 2. I created references for the Muslim army, the individual commanders, the Byzantine commander, and groups of Byzantine soldiers. These images helped establish the armor, clothing, colors, and overall visual direction before I started generating the videos. I already covered the full Nano Banana image generation process in my previous video, so I won't repeat the same workflow here. I'll leave a link to that video on screen. For most of the more complicated action shots, I used Seedance 2.0 through Magnific. Inside Magnific, I open the video section and select Seedance 2.0. For these generations, I'm not using a traditional start frame or end frame. Instead, I add multiple reference images. Here I'm adding the Muslim soldiers, the Byzantine soldiers, and the environment where the battle takes place. Inside the prompt, I can tag each reference by typing the @ symbol, selecting the image, and explaining how it should be used. For example, this image represents the Muslim army, this one represents the Byzantine army, and this one defines the battlefield. I then select the duration, resolution, aspect ratio, and whether I want the video to include generated sound. I used Claude to help structure some of the prompts, but you can use any language model or Magnific's built-in prompt enhancer. The rest of the shots followed the same basic process, so instead of repeating every generation one by one, here are the final results I selected. Most of these shots were generated through Magnific. I've placed my Magnific affiliate link in the description. If you subscribe through it, I may earn a commission at no additional cost to you. Magnific did not sponsor this video. One problem kept appearing across almost every combat generation, sometimes confused the two sides during combat. Clearer prompts helped, but I still had to remove a few mistakes in editing. I didn't use Seedance for every shot. For some of the simpler movements, where I didn't need complicated interactions between multiple characters, I used Kling 3.0. Later, when I needed 6 additional shots and my Magnific subscription had already ended, I generated the images in Google Flow and animated them locally using LTX 2.3 inside ComfyUI. For the journey from Medina to Muta, I built a custom 3D map using Blender, ComfyUI, and After Effects. It combines 3D terrain, custom location emblems, AI-generated mounted figures, and 2.5D atmospheric elements. The complete workflow deserves its own video, so I'll cover the full map process in a dedicated tutorial. For this shot, I generated several versions, but none of them gave me the huge Byzantine army covering the entire horizon. I chose the version with the strongest camera movement and formations, then expanded the army inside After Effects. I also tracked the camera, added the floating 100,000 plus number, and created a custom mask so it could pass behind the foreground soldiers and spears. For the Byzantine commander transition, I exported a frame from the original Kling footage and used Nano Banana 2 to isolate the commander and his horse. I then used that isolated image to generate a smooth rotating shot. Inside After Effects, I placed an aged piece of parchment between the blurred original battlefield footage and the rotating commander. A match cut connects the commander in the original footage to the isolated rotating version, while the information graphics appear over the parchment. For this scene, we are looking through the eyes of a Muslim warrior as Byzantine arrows fill the sky and descend toward the Muslim line. I generated two versions of the shot. The first version had the better beginning, with the arrows and shield movement, while the second had the stronger charge toward the Byzantine soldiers. So I combined the strongest section from each generation. To hide the cut, I placed a black solid above the footage and drew one rough mask in the middle of the frame, representing the area visible between the eyelids. I inverted the mask, feathered its edges, and animated the mask path so it closed and opened. The footage changes while the eye is completely closed, allowing the two different generations to connect naturally. I reused the same blink technique for Khalid's point of view shots. For those scenes, I also blurred the outer edges and added a subtle red vein overlay using screen blending mode. This made the scene feel more intense and exhausted, while also helping me hide a few unwanted moments from the generated footage. For the commander's final moments, I didn't want to show blood or graphic violence. I exported a frame from each scene and used Nano Banana 2 to transform it into a high-contrast black and white anime-style silhouette. These were static images, not generated videos. Inside After Effects, I placed the stylized image at the exact moment of impact. I animated exposure on an adjustment layer and added a very brief white frame to create a strong flash between the original footage and the silhouette. I used the same general visual language for the commanders, but changed the timing and composition so the moments didn't feel completely repeated. For one of the commander shots, I used echo and posterized time instead, creating a rough, slow shutter effect and giving that scene a different visual treatment. For Ja'far's final moment, I chose to create a cinematic parallax shot to give the scene a different rhythm from the surrounding battle footage. I generated one still image, prepared it as separate depth layers, and animated the final scene inside After Effects. This effect has a complete Photoshop and After Effects workflow behind it, so I'll cover the entire process in a dedicated tutorial. The sword-breaking shot had one major problem. The blade shattered correctly, but a few frames later, the AI suddenly rebuilt it. Regenerating the entire shot could have changed the movement and composition, so I repaired only the damaged frames. First, I used B and N to define the work area around the problem section. I then sent that short section to the render queue and exported it as a JPEG sequence. The problem only lasted for around 11 frames. I opened those frames in Photoshop and used the Remove tool to erase the part of the blade that was incorrectly returning. I'm only showing a few examples here, but I repeated the same correction across the complete sequence. After saving the corrected images, I imported the first JPEG back into After Effects and enabled JPEG sequence. The blade now remained broken, but the detached fragment had disappeared completely. To restore it, I exported the last frame where the broken fragment still looked good. I isolated the fragment in Photoshop and brought it back into After Effects as a transparent PNG. I then animated its position, rotation, and scale, and added motion blur so it continued flying naturally through the shot. Finally, I wanted the broken fragment to pass behind the warrior in the foreground. I duplicated the repaired footage and used the Object Matte tool to isolate the warrior. By placing that isolated layer above the animated fragment, the broken piece correctly disappeared behind him, and that completed the sword repair. Once all the individual scenes were finished, I added the music and sound effects. The main project was created in 1920 by 1080, so I placed the finished composition inside a new 2560 by 1440 master composition. I used detail-preserving upscale to enlarge the finished sequence. Above it, I added 3 adjustment layers. The first contains lumetri color for the final color grade. The second contains a subtle CC vignette, and the final layer adds film grain. These finishing effects help footage generated with several different models feel like one continuous film. And that's the full workflow behind the Battle of Muta sequence. I'll be releasing 3 complete tutorials from this project: the cinematic 3D map, the massive army expansion with camera tracking and masking, and Jafar's parallax scene. Tell me which one you want to see first, and subscribe so you don't miss the full tutorials.